You're listening to the Inspire Excellence podcast, recorded at the BVA headquarters, with your hosts, Kevin Miller and Tommy Ahlquist. Each episode is focused on shedding new light on different perspectives to create dialogue that inspires excellence.
Welcome again to another episode of Inspire Excellence. Tommy Ahlquist, Kevin Miller here. And Tommy, I think we're going to learn something today. Of course, we learn something every day, but we're going to be hip. We're going to be happening.
Hey, I am more hip every time I'm with this good friend of mine that's here with us today. I'm super excited to have Erik Finman join us today. Many of you know Erik as the Bitcoin millionaire kid. He's been on every news station nationally. Many people know him, but don't know he's from Idaho. Erik became a dear friend a few years ago to me, and certainly one of the most inspirational stories you'll hear of him. And then his mother is in the education industry and is probably the most innovative educator in America. And she's from North Idaho too, which is a different story. But Erik, thanks for being here today with us. Thanks for coming on. And can you start by just giving us a little brief introduction into who you are, a little bit about your story, and then Kevin and I will ask you a few questions.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's my pleasure too, Tommy. My story, I guess, it does start in Idaho. I grew up in Idaho on a llama farm, of all places. And the llama farm, although I was very interested in technology, and it was a little bit more than a llama farm, my family was all very into technology and all that. But yeah, I got really passionate about it, really into it, and kind of my first project out of the gate was actually in the education space. I had gone to 6, 8 different schools, however many, charter schools, private schools, public schools, high schools, all this stuff, from A to B. And I really hated it. I actually had one teacher, he told me to drop out and work at McDonald's because that's all I'll ever amount to in life. I had another teacher roast me for the entire hour of class. Instead of teaching, it was just making fun of me, and people would stand up. But wasn't in good fun. And then, so I decided actually to drop out of high school. So I did take my original teacher's advice, but kind of skipped the McDonald's part. And then ended up starting my own kind of education company, eventually sold that. Along the way, got super into Bitcoin.
So
and that whole world.
I'm going to slow you down a little bit, because for our listeners out there, how old were you when you started that first company?
Oh, yeah, I was 15 when I started that company, and I got into Bitcoin when I was 12.
Yeah, so you got into Bitcoin when you're 12, you start your company when you're 15, and I think one of the most amazing parts of the story, when you sell your company, you told them, this is a teenager now selling a company, you wanted them to buy your company in Bitcoin, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wanted them to buy my company in Bitcoin. So that was a very cool thing to do. It was selling it to another kind of Bitcoin type person, off the grid person, and but a very established person. And then so it was very interesting. I thought that was just the coolest thing. I mean, back then Bitcoin was very low, so people would have thought, oh, take it in cash. But I said take it in Bitcoin, and ended up making 10, 100 times back. Even I sold my company for a lot of money, and then I ended up making a lot more money on top of that.
Okay, so you sell your company. You made a lot of money, Erik. You're very humble. You made a lot of money. So
huge amount.
So a huge, more money than most of us ever will dream of in a long time. And at this point, you're 16, right?
16 years old. 17.
17 years old. So tell us a little bit about the last couple of years, because you're 20 now, right, Erik?
I know I'm an old man. So it's out of the teenage years. Yeah, I just turned 20 a month and a half ago. So it's So I've been doing a lot of cool stuff. I mean, along the way, we recently, just a few months ago or somewhere around there, we built this robotic exoskeleton for this kid, and it was cool. It was his dream to have this real life Dr. Octopus, from Spider-Man 2. And then we made that for him, and that was really beautiful and really good. And he's an incredibly, super strong now, which is amazing. And so that was cool. We, me and actually my mother, because my mother is a excellent person in space, and with some other teenagers as well, we ended up launching a satellite, and that was just a few days ago. And then we got part of that was a time capsule, so that was really cool. So it was kind of like a 21st century golden record. If you don't know what the golden record was, it was Carl Sagan's a little time capsule on the Voyager mission, had like the classic photo of like the golden, like naked man on it, just in case aliens found it, to show what humans look like. And then, we wanted to do a 21st century that. So we got, videos from every race, every gender, every culture, as many countries as we could get, to kind of truly represent the world. And we put it like these small little videos from each of these groups onto this time capsule. And then we got, people that are kind of huge kind of parts of the culture. We got politicians. We got Taylor Swift. She sent us her favorite music. We got all these famous kind of people to represent the youth. We got all these famous YouTubers, which was very cool. It was like Logan Paul, which is just so random, and that type of thing. He contributed to it, and it was crazy, So we got celebrities, politicians, and just normal people, average people to really represent the world. And so that was really cool. And that was just a few days ago. So a lot of stuff.
I saw you post the launch. That was incredible. So just a really quick summary from llama farm to company, to Bitcoin, to robotics, to rocket launches, and you just turned 20, just so our listeners get who we have on the show today.
Sure. I feel like
I get bored easily.
Yeah. Kevin just said there's times you feel like an underachiever, and then there's this, when we talk to you, Eric.
Yeah, Eric, if we could, we you were talking about your mom and the value of education, and back to your experience with formal education. How did you develop the skills at such a young age to come up with the idea of a company? And unlike most of us, to implement it, to make it profitable, and to sell it. I mean, right now, most people are, out of high school for a couple of years at your age, or their second or third year of college, and you're already launching satellites.
Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. So, I mean, wait, could you repeat the question again? I don't know
if I can remember the question, but at the age of 15, you start your own business, and I believe you left high school, and you have this educational background from your mom, who's an innovator in education. How did you know what you wanted to do at 15 as opposed to the rest of us that are still trying to figure it out, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when I was about 3 years old, when I had my very first memory, when you just like start recording, if you will, it's like you start recording, you start remember, like I don't remember when I was like 1 or whatever. So when I was 3, I remember I asked my mother, because I felt like an alien coming onto Earth that had my mind wiped. And that's kind of how I felt, is I remember observing my surroundings and being very aware that I was recording for the first time, or starting to remember or realize things or be conscious for the first time. And I remember asking my mom, I said, why do I look out of my eyes and not yours or anyone else's? And then she didn't really have like an answer for that. But I think that was, there was this kind of internalized thing, this internalized mindset that came out of that. I was like, well, if I'm looking out of my eyes, I'm looking out of my eyes for a reason. And I was very aware I was a child. I was very aware that I was 3 or 5 or 8 or 10 or 12, whatever, 15. And I desperately I felt like an adult in a 3-year-old's body. I still felt 3. I did all that. But played lots of fun games, built Legos, had a happy childhood. But I was very aware that I was, in my own, in a small body where no one would take me seriously. So I think as soon as I was old enough, and I think 15 is like probably the bare minimum to at least probably work in the adult world, at least somewhat seriously. I think then I kind of, I moved to Silicon Valley when I was 15 after I dropped out of school all by myself and all that. And then, my family, my mother, my father, my brothers, I joke that we're like the Elon Musk version of the Kardashians. My brothers are very smart. My middle brother, he just sold his company to the Pokemon Go guys for a disgusting amount of money, a little bit disgusting. And then, my parents, both PhDs from Stanford, my oldest brother also, traveling around the world, working on his laptop on the beach. So, the mindset I think was there, especially from my mother. I'm very close to my mother. I like to involve her in anything that I do just because, I love my mom. I love my mama.
So Eric, I wasn't sure where this would go today, but it's going somewhere I think pretty cool. I've been around you a lot, and I've been around your mom a lot. And I'd have to say, of people I know in my life, I'm 50, that I leave every time inspired that I'm even in her presence. Your mother is incredible. She is one of the most amazing minds I've ever been around. She is a Stanford PhD, inventor, innovator, educator. But then I've never met anyone that has such a passion to give back and translate all of that to other people. That's just who she is. I want to ask you, what's it like? Because I know you're close to her. And Paul, your dad, kind of the same thing in a different way. What was it like growing up in the Finman household with those two accomplished people, but also people that care about others? It's a unique family. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. I mean, yeah, my mother is caring. Not many people know about this because she'll never tell anyone. It was when kind of the beginning of the war in Iraq, and all that, my mom, kind of got all the community together and then, sent all, gave a huge, huge yellow ribbon goodbye to all the troops going out there, going to the airport and all that, going to war, all those young boys going to war. And that was really beautiful. She did this for 2 years in a row, right after they kind of went off. And if they came back, she worked with the National Guard to put this whole kind of event together with fireworks, with, kind of clowns, happy things for the families of these soldiers, and their wives. We got everyone with monster trucks, fireworks, barbecue, food, clowns, candy, going through the tanks, doing all this stuff, these incredible events, these incredible things, that she did. And then that was just, she got everyone together, really put it up. She convinced everyone to donate those fireworks, those food, the monster trucks completely for free. She did this a couple years in a row. And then eventually she has her own business with my father. They're co-founders, of building these devices which block people from remotely blowing up mines under Humvees. It's actually in the president's limousine. And actually President Bush sent a personal letter to my parents and their company, and obviously including my mom, of, it was a funny story. The IRS or the Idaho IRS or some tax agency was auditing my parents during the height of this. My parents' company was the only one that could make this, the only one that could save these people's lives really in the entire country, in Idaho of all places. And then Bush wrote a personal letter to the tax agency saying, could you please, temporarily, pause this audit, this, random audit, because, she's saving lives. Their company is saving lives. And I think that was really beautiful and really powerful. So it was very interesting growing up with that and all that. And I was very young. So it was, 2002, 2003, early 2000s and growing up with that. And as things escalated, seeing all that, it was very fascinating. It was very cool to see all that and observe all that. Because my parents, they would kind of tell me everything, but for better or for worse. But it was very beautiful.
That's great.
Erik, what does Idaho mean to you?
Idaho is one of the most unique, beautiful, outdoorsy places probably in the world. And I've seen a lot of the world. I think just the hiking trails, the beauty. I call Coeur d'Alene, an American mini Monaco during the summer. It's very beautiful. I think Coeur d'Alene, just the lake with the hiking and all that stuff down that. Boise, one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. It's really beautiful. And there's so much land. Things are affordable, still relatively. And it's just growing. And thanks to you, it's growing, Tommy. And it's just a beautiful place. So it's hard to say with one word, but yeah, growth, growth and beauty and growth.
Probably home, right?
Home, yeah. Exactly.
Hey, Erik, so two things I kind of want to get to with you. And one is you become a celebrity, right? Who you hang out with in the world, you hang out with these bloggers and these YouTubers, you hang out. It is the lifestyle you live right now is pretty amazing. You're just turned 20 and you have a place in New York and LA and you travel the world. You've seen a lot of the world and you hang out with these folks. One, how do you, and I think anyone listening to the show, I'd ask you to go follow Erik on social media. He's got a social media persona that's a little edgy. Some of the posts you do and the pictures you do. And I know that's part of the gig, right? When you're a social media icon. What's that world like? What is that world like for a kid from Idaho?
Just going on the social media stuff, because if they do go on my social media, I'll look like a different person. But no, I do these I do these obnoxious photos that are really beyond truly obnoxious. I don't think the English language has truly evolved enough to really describe how obnoxious my photos are.
Just describe one for Kevin in case he hasn't seen it.
Oh yeah, so one of my photos, for example, it's actually a very beautiful, I'd say, Renaissance style photo. I'm laying on my bed. I've got these gold sunglasses on. I'm looking to the side, resting. I've got this these Adidas sweatpants on with these, this kind of like shirt, kind of weird, mafia shirt, and I've got a gun in my hand, gold chains, and then the whole bed is just covered in, hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands of $100 bills. So that's kind of my thing. I was actually in GQ. They asked me, so what is a morning like in the day of Erik Finman? And I said, well, I just wake up, my $100 bills, they fall off me like silk, because they're my blanket. I sleep with sunglasses on. I get up, immediately there's like an espresso put in front of me. I move to the side, put my feet in a pair of Red October $6,000 Yeezys. And then I get up and start my day, and that's the day of the life of Erik Finman, or the morning of Erik Finman at least. But no, I do these kind of stunts. I say these things. I sound obnoxious because, I think you got to be, how many projects that are just started by really smart but nerdy guys, but no one pays attention to them. How many companies and genius world-changing ideas just failed because no one paid attention to them. You got to be sensational. And I think that's really powerful. You got to be a little bit of a sensation. You got to be a little bit provocative. You got to be bombastic. And I remember The Guardian actually, they wrote an article about this as meet Erik Finman, the teenage Bitcoin millionaire. And no, he's not as awful as he seems on Instagram. And I thought that was a very good caption. And it goes into kind of my whole strategy of using these sensational, obnoxious photos to bring attention to my, really valuable projects that are meaningful.
Well, I think it's super smart, and I get why you do it, but I'm going to let the secret out of the bag here on our podcast. The guy behind all that's one of the most sincere and genuine guys I've ever known. So I think it's funny when I see him. We all laugh because we love and know the true Erik, who's the guy that cares about everyone and is humble and comes from this incredible background. Okay, let's get into the second thing I want to get into, Erik, Bitcoin, right? I think for those people listening today, what I might ask you, because even though I think I've become very familiar with it and a lot of people have, give us a little history on Bitcoin, just a short history, and then talk to us about what's changing. You have been all over national media lately. You know this, but New York Post front page, Erik Finman proclaims Bitcoin is dead. Tell us a little bit about what Bitcoin is, and then, boy, you're everywhere right now because of what you said.
Yeah. So I was a huge Bitcoin fan in 2011, or, for years and years and years, pretty much up until recently, since 2011, which is just pretty much right after it started. But yeah, the origins of Bitcoin, they started right after the 2008 financial crisis, which says something about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. And it started right after that as a kind of reaction to that. An anti-Federal Reserve, an anti-Ben Bernanke, an anti-US dollar, because it seems that the people managing the economy kind of failed. And it was completely decentralized. It was completely decentralized. No one could control it. No crappy politicians running it. Just a completely decentralized way to be able to send money and use money and have a self-sufficient economy. Countries in Africa started using it because their currencies were particularly unstable, or making their own cryptocurrency a competitor to Bitcoin because their own currencies were so unstable. So it was a way to free you from maybe politician-run currency, government-run currency. So that was kind of the reaction, and was really growing for a lot of years, many years, in a really beautiful and strong and impactful way. And I think recently, Bitcoin It's very interesting. So what's beautiful about Bitcoin being decentralized is you can actually copy and paste the code and edit it a little bit and then change the name and make something completely new. And that's what has happened to Bitcoin is people have made, hundreds of new different types of Bitcoins. So some are called Bitcoin Cash. There's like Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin, gold, they copied and pasted the code. It's like copying and pasting, Facebook and changing it to, some other type of name, right? Like Erik Book. And then it's not really that different. Maybe a logo's different, or maybe the feed's a bit different, or maybe it's a big difference, like how Facebook and Instagram are different. But that's kind of what Bitcoin is. So I think Bitcoin has gotten taken over and controlled by a core group of developers, which is, again, it's a little bit technical, but a very core group of developers. They've kind of commandeered it like pirates and are moving Bitcoin into something that I don't believe it should be. And then there's been a group that has separated off of that called Bitcoin Cash, which I think has made a incredible technology, but they can't seem to market it. They can't seem to pull it together. They're pretty much universally hated by everyone. And if you can't convince people, they almost kind of deserve that if they can't convince people. So there's other cryptocurrencies, competitors to Bitcoin, called like Ethereum or Zcash, that I think have really beautiful technologies, really beautiful visions, and are on track. And I think Bitcoin has gotten off track, and I don't think it will ever go back on track. I think it might go up. I think it will definitely go up in huge ways, maybe 1, 2, or 3 more times. But long term, Bitcoin is dead, but cryptocurrency is alive and well, and will continue to be alive and well.
How does it feel, Erik, to have at the age of 20 to be able to say something and give an opinion like that, and have everyone and this isn't just the United States of America, in the world, stand up and say, hey, you got to listen to what this kid's saying because he knows a thing or two about this. How does that feel?
Feels good. Yeah. Wake up. I'm on like, feels good. Not going to lie. But it's cool to be on the front page of New York Post. It's cool to be on, Fox News. It's cool to be, on the cover of The Sun or, in The Sun, which is a big British newspaper. And be in Business Insider Netherlands, it's very cool. It's very fascinating. It's definitely an ego trip.
That's great. Well, I think we're going to look for more great things from you. Erik, let me ask you another let's moving on to something else. Here we sit, the economy's kind of really going well. And I think we're all worried a little bit about a recession and how all that plays out. But what do you see in the tech sector, in technology? What does the next 3, 5, 6, 7 years look like in technology? What would, if you were telling our listeners something to watch out for that's happening out there that we might not be looking at?
I mean, Silicon Valley is in for a reckoning in one way or another. I mean, Silicon Valley, I think they become the new Wall Street as a target, or maybe in addition to Wall Street as a target. And I'm not talking about being anti-entrepreneurial, anti-technology. I'm very pro-technology, very pro-entrepreneur. But Silicon Valley, they're this elitist culture, and I think they're going to fail and self-destruct in many different ways. So I think that's something to look for. And I think politicians will target them because the left politicians hate them in one way, because they attribute Facebook as one of the reasons why Trump won, and social media is one of the reasons Trump won. And I think the right hates Facebook and a lot of social media companies because they're starting to ban a bunch of accounts on the left and the right, and then they also believe that's the reason Trump won. So Facebook, Twitter, and these companies are in this weird middle ground where they're banning people left and right, literally on the party front, and then thus whoever controls social media controls who gets elected. And I think that's a very powerful thing. And the left and right are both that you see someone who was just number one trending, someone chain themselves to the front of Twitter. And that was very interesting. And that was a cultural moment. Someone shot up YouTube just a couple months ago for having her videos be destroyed tonight. That's obviously really terrible, but they're getting shot up People are being chaining themselves to the front. People are protesting, and it's only going to get worse, in my belief. You see the protests in France. I think you're going to see protests like that in Silicon Valley. I think that there's going to be an Occupy Wall Street. There's going to be an Occupy Silicon Valley. And I think that's going to be very interesting and very, very fascinating coming up. Because I think people are sick. Am I allowed to cuss on this podcast?
Sure.
I think people are sick of their shit. And I think that's going to come in the next 3 to 4 years. But what's beautiful about that is people are going to create alternatives. So it's no better time to probably look out for new startups that are, particularly in maybe the blockchain space, which is the technology Bitcoin is based off of and other cryptocurrencies are based off of. So that decentralizes everything. So there's no company, no entity. It's just math and algorithms running everything that are independent, that you can choose not to use and compete with. So you can, I think that's a great area to invest in and look at.
That's great.
Blockchain tech.
Hey, Eric, I was wondering, for those of us that, grew up in the analog world, and there are fewer and fewer of us every day, but could you explain to maybe the non-Bitcoin expert how something can go from, a value of $50 to its high and now to its low? I think it was around $3,000. I have a friend who had the only Bitcoin ATM in the Treasure Valley. And I can remember when it was $1,000, the next day it was $1,500. And we watched this incredible climb and now the collapse, and you say it's coming back, but how does that work as far as attributing a value to something that many of us can't comprehend?
I mean, establishing the price of a certain currency. I mean, are you talking about how is the price determined, or why do people see cryptocurrency or Bitcoin as valuable?
Well, how you could go from something that may be $1,500 to in a week it's $3,000, and then it continues to climb. And New York Times did a story on the Bitcoin farms in Eastern Washington and the amount of energy. It's just something that I don't know if we've ever seen in human history.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, people talk about the fall of Rome. History repeats itself. The United States is kind of in a bad place, I think, right now. But the one thing that is different compared to history is that we have the internet and we have blockchain technology. So that really is something that's interesting and different compared to past empires falling, like the British Empire or Roman Empire or Greece or even the Soviet Union. It's very interesting. So I mean, why does the price go up and down? I mean, why it goes up and down so fast is it's pretty just, there's a certain amount of supply. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoins to ever exist. And so that's if you have, a relatively small market cap of, maybe $250 billion, which in financial currency terms, that's very small. So that's, that's divided out between this. So with the US dollar, there's literally trillions and trillions of US dollars that exist. So that's the price really goes up and down in pennies over like decades. So I think that's kind of different, where there's only 21 million Bitcoins and $250 billion. So, someone that sells $50 million of US currency to like maybe British pounds, that's not going to make a difference in the currency. But for Bitcoin, because there's so few Bitcoins, that's going to make a huge difference. It's like, when there's like a shoe drop or a clothing drop, the price is very high, and then it goes out onto the market, and then after the price goes down because there's more produced, or maybe there's a limited edition, and then the price is really high. Bitcoin is like the limited edition of cryptocurrency, of just currencies in general. Most currencies have billions or trillions of kind of dollars or pounds or bills. And then with Bitcoin, there's just 21 million. It's a limited edition currency, if you will.
That's amazing. I can't believe that you've had people actually strain electrical grids coming up with these Bitcoin farms. Just the drain that it has on our antiquated grid. What do you make of that? That people would, obviously they're making money doing this.
Yeah, I mean it's a short-term problem. It's like this is the equivalent of, oh my God, we're going to run out of whale oil. What are we going to use to like light our rooms with? And then the light bulb came about. right? That was like a huge thing. You know, people are thinking about whale oil, and then the light bulb just came about because whale oil is a finite source. But Bitcoin is in the sense at the technology level, or other cryptocurrencies at the technology level, yeah, they use a lot of energy right now to produce. But that's why people are coding new cryptocurrencies or upgrading current cryptocurrencies where they use less and less and less energy. So like, you know, it's kind of like a computer, right? Like my computers have gotten more powerful, but, you know, they use less energy than a mainframe back in the day. So that's kind of the equivalent, is maybe we're in the cryptocurrency equivalent of mainframes. So that they used a lot of power and barely did anything. You know, in the future, I think they're going to use like next to no power, and then do a lot more, and be a lot more powerful, a lot more capable. So that's just a short-term problem. A lot of smart people are working on it.
Well, Erik, I think we're wrapping up here soon here. I can't wait to ask you this question because I don't know what you're going to say. At the end of each one of our episodes, we're asking all our guests what inspires you. The podcast is Inspire Excellence.
You, Tommy.
Yeah, whatever. but Erik, I honestly, I've been around a lot of pretty unique people in my life, but no one like you. And you were just in town a few months ago, and we were able to go to breakfast. And after that, everyone I saw that day, I just said, just being around you it's inspiring. It really is. The way you think, the way you approach life. Your mind, and I do attribute a lot of that to your parents, but I can't wait to hear what Erik Finman says to the question of what inspires you. So go ahead.
That's tough because I'd get in trouble for saying what inspires me. But yeah, I mean, I think what drives me forward and that inspiration is fuel. I think that the world is I think people are too small-minded. And then I think there's a few large-minded people that I like, but I think even people are too small-minded of what you can do and what is possible in the world. And I think just the dreams of what I could do that are so grand and so big, nothing has really ever been done like the things that I'm dreaming of. They're at a higher level than maybe like a king. They're at a higher level than a president. They're at a higher level than a lot of these deities people follow. There's going to be a new word, I think, after like my lifetime, because people say, you know, what is a man to a king? What is a king to a god? What is a god to, you know, a Finn man, right? You know, I mean, that sounds like the most egotistical thing. But, you know, I'm really going to be, you know, a lot of these prophets have come about, and then they've done really impactful things and really done a lot of beautiful things. And of course, you know, there's like authentic prophets versus maybe not so authentic prophets. But I'm going to do bigger things than them. And I think that's going to be really huge. And again, that sounds like the most egotistical, narcissistic thing you could ever say. But I think, you know, if you're alive on this earth, why not dream to the biggest? You know, there's that like, you go in like an arcade game and then you see like there's like the top 10 score of that arcade game and you want to beat number 1 or number 2, right? And then I want to beat number 1 of that game. And I don't know who the number 1 person in the game of Earth, and as long as the Earth has existed, has been. I don't know who the number 1 player is, but I will be by the number 1 player in probably, maybe not even at the end of my lifetime. I think I'll probably be there a little bit earlier than that. But it's this big-minded thinking. Actually, I will give an example of a person that is not someone that I really look up to, but in a situation that I really admired. It was this guy, it was this podcast, another podcast, Inception, but he was talking about, he worked directly into Larry Page, and he was saying like back in like 2004, like Google was thinking about making a TiVo kind of ripoff. And then Larry Page said, what would it cost to send our TiVo ripoff to everyone in the United States? And then nobody had thought that big before, right? Because they made money off the subscription. So it's like, do the math on how much it would cost to send to everyone and how likely are people going to subscribe to our service. So thus we make money back on the box. That's really huge type of thinking. And I think he said the math ended up being about $5 billion to send it to everyone in the United States. And he said, well, you know, let's do it. But, you know, they ended up not making that box. But what a world. That's like big-minded thinking, to be able to send, how do I impact something where everyone in the United States, 330 million people will experience something. And I have the money to front it. Google had the money to be able to do that. That's billion-dollar, trillion-dollar thinking, and that's big thinking. And that small little thing of thinking that big really inspired me. But imagine if you did that type of thing, not with TiVo ripoff boxes, but with like things like solving homelessness or medical care or education. That's the type of thinking that I think is beautiful. And I don't think anyone really thinks of, even Larry Page, the CEO of Google, or the founder.
He's got me convinced.
Well, Erik, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us today, and wish you and your family happy holidays, and can't wait to see you again back home here in Idaho. Erik, anything else?
Erik, appreciate it, and can't wait to hear more about your success, sir.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's always a pleasure talking with you too. And I just met you, Kevin, but always a pleasure with you too, Tommy. I consider you an amazing friend, and you'll be an amazing friend too, I'm sure, Kevin.
I'll work on it, Erik.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Inspire Excellence podcast. We invite you to find something that inspires you this week. Join us again for our next episode.